Hi, welcome. This presentation is not about learning something new. It's about remembering something really ancient. If you're on a healing journey and you still aren't where you want to be, you can experience a kind of fatigue, like a burnout from protocols, or a feeling of confusion from contradictory advice. You can feel overwhelmed because you think you're becoming informed. There's a lot of information out there, but information is not transformation. So I just want you to feel like you can exhale, right? If you are on a journey and you're overwhelmed or confused or feeling like it's just too complicated, you can exhale. If healing has felt hard, it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because we've made it far more complicated than it ever needed to be. Most people don't fail at healing, they just get lost in the complexity. Because health has been turned into something that you need to outsource. Have you noticed that? So, this presentation is not about fixing yourself, it is about remembering how the body already knows. It already knows how to heal. That's the simple truth. The body already knows how to heal. It is always trying to heal. And our job is to remove any obstruction to that natural process. And we're addressing here a fundamental inversion of truth, the very inversion that makes this talk necessary in the first place. I know that in my own journey of healing and exploration of detoxification and cleansing and trying to deal with things that were coming up for me, it was really a journey of unlearning and deprogramming rather than acquiring more protocols. So, in my work as a natural health coach, it's really not about doing more. It's all about removing interference. Healing is simple. It's the interference that's complicated. So, why we even need to talk about this in the first place and why this conversation matters? Well, we live in an era of information overload, don't we? We know more than ever. We have rapid access to all kinds of information, although whether that information is accurate is debatable. And yet we trust ourselves less than ever. So there's a kind of paradox here. We have this infinite access to information, though that information may be curated by powerful interests. That's a whole other, it's a whole other thing. And at the same time, we have diminishing confidence in our own body. So there is also a loss of trust, right? Health has become something that we manage instead of our natural state, which is what it should be. The truth is that we have been trained and programmed to outsource our authority. Now, I want to clarify that I am not anti-medicine. I am not anti-practitioner. I am pro relationship with the body. And there are situations where the capacities of modern medicine are absolutely needed. I really admire emergency medicine, for example, and there are really great practitioners out there who truly care about people. But, what we need first and foremost is currency with our own body and being. That's where our true power lies. So we've really entered an age of synthetic complexity. So, and what I mean by synthetic is anything that is not organic and natural as an expression of creation itself. So this complexity is synthetic, it's imposed. Modern systems are built on control, on prediction, on intervention, and the body is treated like a faulty mechanism. So, in this model of reality, symptoms are treated as enemies. Symptoms are enemies when the body is seen as a machine, right? Symptoms look like breakdowns. When, by contrast, the body is seen as intelligent, symptoms look like communication. And this is completely different. With a little bit of research, we can find out how this happened. I mean, this is a whole other rabbit hole, but simply put, the system that we were all born into was intentionally shaped by powerful interests like Rockefeller and Carnegie and the Flexner Report back in 1910 to discredit natural healing and elevate pharmaceutical dominance for profit. The result is that modern medical training and healthcare are built on intervention rather than respecting the body's intelligence and its way of doing things. Symptoms in this model are treated as enemies rather than messages, and the body is viewed as a machine of different parts instead of a holistic, self-regulating ecosystem, which is what it is. So, through modern systems, synthetic complexity has been imposed on the actual simplicity of healing. And there's an important distinction that I want to gently make here, and which is that this isn't about rejecting science, right? We're not rejecting legitimate science. And there's legitimate and fake science that is funded by special interests in order to get a certain result, in order to influence sales and the mind, right? I'm talking about legitimate science. We are not rejecting that. We're just noticing what is missing from the current model, right? And that's a relationship with ourself first and foremost. There is a real cost to this imposition of complexity. One is the loss of trust in our bodies and our beings and their intelligence, which engenders fear, right? You suddenly are disconnected from what's real. There's also a loss of confidence, which leads to a kind of paralysis, right? Like, am I doing this right? And those two lead to the loss of inner authority, which creates dependence on external authorities. I mean, it's as if we got scythed, cut off from our inner wisdom, and therefore we're forced to consult external authorities for our health, right? And outsource the intelligence that our body naturally has to heal us, and we've disconnected from that, and we've projected it onto external sources. We've been trained to distrust pain, right? Pain is, from this there we go again, modern medical view, is something inconvenient to be suppressed or managed, rather than a messenger that may lead us to the root cause of an imbalance. We've got a distortion around fatigue, right? In our culture, fatigue is, for many people, something to override as a weakness because our culture rewards productivity over presence, right? Intuition is deemed by many unreliable, airy-fairy, or it's a just, right? It's just my intuition. I find myself saying that still too, right? Oh, it's just my intuition, so not really worth taking seriously. We've also been taught to treat hunger, the feeling of hunger, as something that has to be dispelled by eating, rather than allowing a feeling of emptiness that creates space for inner inquiry. right? We rush to fill the hole. It's a bad thing. To be hungry is a bad thing, right? We've been taught to distrust cycles. True natural cycles are dismissed or flattened out while we're being entrained to synthetic cycles that are based on productivity and consumption. Like work hard to make the money so you can buy the things and keep up with the neighbors, commercialized holidays, Thanksgiving to Black Friday to Cyber Monday to Christmas to New Year. It's like all year long, right? So when trust in our inner signals is broken, dependency is created. And a body that you don't trust becomes a body that you hand over. And then we enter the marketplace of confusion, where there's endless supplements, conflicting advice, the biohacking culture, which is just another, form of instant gratification, like, hack, cut through, get right to it. Health as identity performance, right? Like health gurus becomes another identity that you perform. You've got these influencers peddling miracle solutions, and complexity keeps people busy, but it doesn't keep us well. So this brings us back to the first principles, the body's natural design. Healing is not something that the body does occasionally. It's what the body is always trying to do, 24/7. Our cuts heal on their own. Our digestion occurs without instruction from us. When we sleep, the body is restoring itself to the best of its ability without effort, right? We don't have to make it do that. The body is naturally self-regulating, naturally self-healing, and always communicating with us. We just mostly don't listen because we've been separated, as I said, right? Scythed, cut off from our bodies through the loss of trust, the loss of confidence, the loss of inner authority. The body doesn't need to be taught how to heal. It knows how to do that. All it needs is permission. We got to just get out of the way instead of interfering in the process. So let's talk about the root cause of all disease. This is really the spine of this presentation. We got to talk about where illness actually begins, and that is in disconnection, separation from the body's intelligence. Disease does not begin in the organ. It begins when the body is no longer trusted and listened to. It actually begins in more subtle layers of our being, and it works its way down eventually into the physical if something doesn't change. When you lose trust, when you lose confidence, when you outsource your authority, these more subtle dimensions of you are manifesting that energy of disempowerment first, and then it filters down to the body, and that's when some kind of disease process can begin. So on the physical level, when elimination is blocked, when nourishment is inadequate, when emotion is suppressed, when intuition is dismissed, in other words, when signals are ignored, then toxic load increases and nourishment decreases, right? And so we're dealing with accumulation of toxic load and depletion of real nourishment. And we can apply this multidimensionally. We're not just talking about our body. We're talking toxic load accumulation occurs in the mental body, in the emotional body, in the spiritual bodies before it occurs in the physical body, right? The physical body is just, it's the end result of everything that accumulates in us, in our being. And then we are also dealing with physical toxins, on the material level that intensify the accumulation, right? nourishment decreases, in other words, we get depleted, right? If you are spiritually depleted because you've lost the sense of who you are, you're not nourished by the source. You are a generator. That's our true nature, is as generators, not consumers. So when we lose touch with that reality, and it is a reality, then we are depleted of our vital energy, of our sense of who we are, and the body will mirror that as well. So, faced with all of this, the body doesn't fail. It adapts until it can't anymore. So when we strip away all this complexity, unnecessary complexity, we find that the body really only has two needs. If you strip away every protocol, every theory, every system, the body is only asking for two things: a clean internal environment, that is the ability to eliminate waste, and the resources to rebuild in the form of adequate nourishment and rest. And please remember to think multidimensionally here, right? The environment, when we're talking about the environment of the body, a clean internal environment, we're not just talking about the physical environment. That is important too, but we're also talking about what's going on mentally and emotionally, because we know that our thoughts and our feelings can make us sick, right? So how do we detoxify and cleanse on that level? Well, it is possible to do that. And the resources to rebuild. What are you nourishing your mind with? What are you nourishing your spiritual self with? There is spiritual and proper mental nourishment as well. There is rest on those multidimensional levels as well. So when these two needs are met, the body remembers itself, and everything else is pretty much secondary. So why does healing stall? Why does it sometimes seem like an uphill journey to heal when it's a natural process, right? So we've established that healing is a natural, automatic process of the body unless it is interfered with. So what interferes with the healing process? Well, this is modern life, right? We're dealing with constant stimulation, constant input, and distraction through all kinds of different vectors. We're dealing with fear-based narratives that keep the nervous system in fight or flight, that are creating, a cascade of negative effects in the body every time that fear or anxiety is triggered by this constant stimulation. We're also in a situation where we never allow for emptiness. We eat without hunger. We very often we use food to mask discomfort, right? Because discomfort feels dangerous. We don't want to leave an empty space, because when, as they say, the universe abhors a vacuum, right? When there's an empty space, something will come up to your awareness in that empty space. We've been trained to fill every space, but healing requires space. Modern life creates accumulation, like we were just talking about, right? Toxins, waste, emotional residue, and it creates depletion. Depletion of minerals, depletion of enzymes, depletion of vitality, depletion of our attention. Like we can't even remember, like, why did I even walk into this room? And the body gets blamed for reacting appropriately. This is why we have to remember that symptoms are not failures. They are communications. They are calling us back into greater presence with ourselves. Our innate self-healing mechanism is still in there. We just need to activate it sometimes. And the way that we do that is through cleansing or detoxification. Cleansing is the process of dissolving and removing accumulated buildup in your internal and external environments. And remember, we're talking multidimensional here, not just on the physical or the material level, but on your emotional level, your mental level, your spiritual level. We are multidimensional beings. So there are four aspects of intelligent detoxification. First, we have listening, right? Paying attention to what your body is expressing before overriding that with suppression of some kind, suppressing symptoms, trying to make them go away, or immediately outsourcing your authority to somebody else and asking them what's wrong with me, right? So first is listening. And it's not a mental process. It's not like, okay, I have to decide what is this and then research it online. It's not that you don't do those things, but you have to also listen inward because there's a lot of information there and it's not necessarily linear. You might receive it in a non-linear way. That's tuning into your intuition. Okay? Listening. Simplifying, right? Simplifying, like calming the noise in your life, fewer inputs, fewer rules too. Like if you've one of those people has gotten into, and I'm speaking from my own experience, gotten into a whole bunch of rules about what I can and cannot do, what I can and cannot eat, and the way that I have to exactly live my life and getting rigid about things like that, you know, simplify, simplify. Just start getting rid of the noise, anything that's creating noise and distraction in your life. And there's creating space. Space like digestive space, right? Letting yourself be empty sometimes, right? Not rushing to eat when you feel hungry, but just seeing like, well, what is it like if I just abide with this hunger and this emptiness for a moment? What's coming up that is asking for my attention? So much is revealed when you even just intermittent fasting and say, okay, I'm not going to eat after 6 o'clock tonight. The craving, the need to reach for something if that's what your habit has been. So creating space, allowing space to come in. Also, emotional space, mental space. Are you constantly filling the void with scrolling on your phone or having to watch something on television or, having to occupy yourself with some activity? So we want to also create space. And finally, then this is something that most people don't realize. There is an intelligent order in which to cleanse, right? Following the right order for cleansing is especially necessary nowadays because the body is so overloaded. It needs to be prepared, right? All of our passageways are gummed up basically. And so before you launch into something, like some people think, okay, I've got heavy metals. I've got to chelate these heavy metals. I got to get rid of them, right? But if they, and that's a good idea, but it's not necessarily the thing to do first, right? Because if your gut is all blocked up, if your liver is all blocked up and congested, anything that you do, especially when you're dealing with the toxicity of heavy metals, if the system has not previously been cleansed and prepared for heavy metal cleanse, that can actually end up recirculating what you're trying to get rid of. That doesn't feel good, right? Same with parasite cleansing. A lot of people jump into a parasite cleanse, but if the systems and the channels of elimination are not open, then again, you're not going to be as successful with a parasite cleanse. So there is a right order of cleansing so that the body can be prepared for the deeper layers to come up and to come away. So, healing doesn't come from doing more. It comes from, in a lot of cases, doing less and getting out of the way, listening, simplifying, creating space, and intelligently cleansing the body. Healing is just what happens naturally when the obstacles are removed. So under today's circumstances, cleansing and detoxification really need to become a lifestyle if you want to achieve your health goals naturally. And that doesn't mean living a life of deprivation. It's just about shifting your focus towards investing your time and energy in things that are going to help your body let go, help you return to balance. And it doesn't have to be all the time. You know, the 80-20 rule is a really good rule to follow there. It's not about deprivation, it's not about punishment. It's really about deep self love. Healing is in large part about restoring trust and reclaiming your sovereignty. And what I mean chiefly there is moving from being expert led to self led, right? That's bringing your inner authority back online. So instead of reaching every time something goes wrong or you don't know or don't know, instead of reaching outside yourself for somebody else to tell you what is going on in your body, that you listen first, right? You lead yourself. This is not about rejecting help. It's about reclaiming discernment. And I'm all for. I totally don't recommend that you reject help. I'm a for seeking help, seeking support when you are on a healing journey. That may be from somebody that you haven't considered before. Instead of going to a doctor and instead of going through the allopathic system, you know, there are many natural health coaches now. I'm one. There are many holistic health practitioners now who are aligned with listening and simplicity and, you know, a different way of going about things. So this is not about rejecting help. It's really about reclaiming your discernment. So we're looking for discernment over dependency, that is, strengthening the muscle of inner inquiry when we experience symptoms, right? Opening up the space of listening and being able to dive inside yourself, because you know everything about yourself. Maybe not here in your mind, but intuitively, you know, you are you, you are it. Nobody else can tell you, really. I mean, we can have a mirror, we can have someone to mirror to us uh, what we need to be mirrored in our experience, but nobody else is going to know for true what is going on inside of you. We also want to emphasize relationship over control, seeking relationship with the body rather than trying to control it or make symptoms go away, right? This is not about managing the body. It is about coming back into relationship with it. And then, of course, inner authority, right? Trusting what feels right to you rather than blindly following external suggestion or protocol, right? Somebody might tell you that you need a certain thing. Listen for your intuitive hit with that. Does it feel like, yeah, that feels right? Or is there something in you that is saying, I don't think that's the thing, right? That's all about learning to trust ourselves again. And you know, true practitioners give power back to the person. They don't replace your intuition. They help you to hear it again, right? A true practitioner should never try to make you dependent on them, right? A real mentor, a real coach, a real guide, a real doctor is always going to give the power back to the person, right? Because they can't replace your intuition. They will help you hear it again, ideally, right? Inner authority is a muscle. Our intuition strengthens with use. I mean, our intuition is always there. I should say that our ability to listen to and trust our intuition strengthens with use. Simplicity rebuilds our confidence that we don't need a bunch of stuff from outside of ourselves to be okay. And small choices restore our agency. Now, health sovereignty. What does that really mean? It's a return to relationship with our own healing capacity, which is innate. It's not about perfection. right? Perfectionism stems from the internalized voice that says we aren't good enough, we need to perform worthiness, which leads to a tendency to override the inner voice of truth. Real relationship with the body is about respecting its rhythms and again listening. I know I sound like I'm saying it over and over, but I am, because repetition is one of our greatest tools for learning, right? So, repetition has been used to program us negatively, not for our good, but repetition can also be used to reprogram us with truth. Health sovereignty also is not isolation. It doesn't mean that you're doing everything alone. It's knowing when something is aligned and when it isn't. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to isolate yourself, even if you're stepping out of, the way that everybody else is doing it. There are lots of communities that are going about healing in a totally different way than the mainstream, and you can connect with those, right? But in essence, it's about just knowing when something is aligned or when it isn't aligned. And then ongoing dialogue, right? It's a relationship of trust with your body that deepens over time. So when you return to relationship with your body, it doesn't have to shout anymore, right? You start picking up on the subtle signs. So things don't have to get to a critical point with your health where something comes up and then you panic and then you freak out and then you give away your power, right? That's kind of the model that we've been living with, not necessarily paying attention to, the small signs, right? So that things don't develop into, something critical, where then fear takes over. So I want to give you a practice that is kind of a keystone that brings together everything we've talked about today in terms of restoring health sovereignty and simplicity and listening, right? All of these key elements that we've been talking about. This practice, which I call the presence timer, is a keystone practice, right? It is a foundational practice that I often share with clients as a way to build more presence, more awareness, more communication with yourself throughout the day. So, how does it work? Well, it's so simple. Set your watch or your phone or whatever, could be some other kind of timer, to go off at certain intervals, right? Regular intervals or not, doesn't have to be regular intervals, right? But if you decide I'm going to set my presence timer to go off like 6 times today, right? When the alarm goes off, whatever it is you're doing, you're going to take 3 conscious breaths and do nothing else, right? So let's say, you're in the middle of working on your computer or something like that, and your presence timer goes off. When that alarm goes off, you're taking a break for 3 conscious breaths. That's all. That's how simple it is. But simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. When you work with a presence timer, you will realize how much your mind doesn't actually want you to be present, right? It's going to tell you, like, oh, this is not a good time. Actually, let me just finish this paragraph and then I'll be present, right? Or, I'm talking to somebody right now. I don't think I can be present, right? Let's just listen how crazy that is, right? Because there's nothing that you could be doing in your life, no matter what it is, that would not benefit from you being more present in it. Am I right? So you may be in a situation like, okay, in your car, you're not going to close your eyes, right? You're going to keep driving. But if a presence timer goes off, you're going to take 3 conscious breaths and you're going to take your focus inward, right? It's going to change the way you drive. If you're in a conversation with somebody, you can become present in the moment through your breath. You'll just land there. You'll be there for that person in a whole new way. There is no circumstance under which you cannot be benefited, and others around you and the situation, whatever it is you're in, cannot be benefited by you being more present. But you're going to hear how your mind has all of these excuses why you can't do your presence timer right now, right? Put it off till later and then you forget about it, right? It's happened to me a million times. So it's a really great diagnostic exercise, and I highly recommend that you look into it. This is how trust is rebuilt, not through grand gestures, but through small steps and consistency. That's what it takes, right? Simple things are hard to do, right? Simple things are not necessarily easy, but they are powerful. So to close this presentation, I just want to remind you of certain truths, okay? Your body is not broken. It may not be in its state of balance at this time. It may be expressing, manifesting a disease condition. But that doesn't mean that it's broken. It knows how to function. Symptoms are its way of trying to heal you, right? And trying to bring you back into relationship with your body. It knows how to heal itself as long as we don't get in the way, as long as we facilitate the process of shedding and cleansing the accumulated toxicity, body, mind, and spirit that is causing the imbalance. That's why some people say after they've gone through a major illness, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, right? That's because that person saw the situation, intuitively knew that that situation was about resolving a deep inner conflict or clearing something from the lineage or whatever it is. They were able to glean the teaching from that experience. And so, a lot depends on how we see things, doesn't it? So the body's not broken. It is always on your side. It is never against you. It is always doing its best to heal. We can help by simplifying the process, by removing the obstacles to healing. You are not late, right? It's not too late. You can start now. At first, it's a mindset shift, like, oh, I'm willing to see things differently. I'm willing to open myself up to a new way of doing things. We're never late. Everything happens in divine timing. So if you're coming across this message now and you're feeling inspired or hopeful in some way, you're not late. You have the power right now to start turning this ship around. And finally, simplicity. Simplicity is not going backwards. It's just remembering a truth that was never lost, right? We've been taught to overcomplicate everything. We've been taught that more is better, right? So when we return to simplicity, we're getting rid of the noise. We're hewing to the true elegance of healing. Anything that is naturally, organically intelligent is elegant, right? It's simple. That's what mathematicians always say, when they solve some really complex theorem or something like that. When they find the solution, they often say it's elegant, right? It's actually quite simple. So if things are getting too complicated, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling lost and confused and all of that, well, it's time to go back to simplicity, right? And just to remember the truth. My body knows what it's doing. So let me help it. Let me help this natural healing process to be activated again. So everything that I've talked about in this presentation comes back to the simplicity of healing, doesn't it? So I want to thank you for being with me here today. I want to thank you for your presence throughout this presentation all the way to the end. Thanks for your willingness to listen, to open, maybe to some new ideas, or maybe the seed was planted some time ago and you got confirmation today that your intuition was spot on. In any case, I want to offer you a gift, and that's on my resources page on my website. So if you go to my website, then click on the resources page. There's something called the Natural Health Principles Resource Guide, and you just click on that. It's a free PDF download, and it's got pretty great information in it. So that's yours as a guide. Also, my program, my natural health coaching program, Return to Radiance, is for you if you're really interested in doing a deep detoxification dive, right? A deep journey through cleansing, not just physical cleansing, but cleansing in the multi-dimensional sense, right? A lot of these imbalances that we're experiencing are connected to things that are unresolved in us. And that's what real healing is about, right? It's not just the physical layer, it is healing of our being. So if that is something that you are ready for, ready to commit to, I recommend that you check out that program. For that, you can go to the Work With Me page on my website and you'll see the program there called Return to Radiance. You can click on that and learn more about it, and feel free to contact me if that's something you'd like to explore. I wish you simplicity, sovereignty, and sacred return to the real you. Thanks.